All right, man, peace. So, brothers, this is going to be the latest entry into the series that I recently started called The Corporate Attack on Manhood. Of course, Volume 1 was featuring Miss Serena Williams. And Volume 2 is going to be the quote-unquote New Masculinity edition, starring Mr. Jaboukie Young White, an up-and-coming pansexual comedian who you're going to see skyrocket through the entertainment industry, as well as Mr. Will Welch, the new editor-in-chief of GQ Men's Magazine, or at least at one time was Men's Magazine. It is now Pansexual Magazine, as we're going to see over the course of this segment. And we truly have to ask ourselves, brothers, why is manhood, why is masculinity under such a ferocious attack? And the reason why that is because super liberal feminists understand that they cannot take down men on their own merits. They have to castigate manhood and attempt to embarrass men into capitulation. But you're never going to be able to embarrass men into acknowledging women as their equals or their heads. So you have to focus on young boys. You have to indoctrinate young boys with the majesty of the feminine principle and the erroneous adherence to the belief of quote-unquote sexual fluidity. You have to get the young boys to compromise their nascent manhood from their youth, because by the time they're grown, it's already too late. Their horns have already sprouted, or their antlers, or their mane per se. They see the woman for who she really is, that being a child with breast disease, a wonderful, beautiful, essential child with breast disease, but still a child with breast disease nonetheless. So all of this propaganda is really meant to try to disturb the natural order of things. But just getting back to the point, this person, Jaboukie Young White, is not just someone who's a nobody in the entertainment industry. He's being groomed by Trevor Noah. You may know him as the host of one of these Comedy Central shows. Also, Mr. Will Welch is someone who is a mover and shaker. He's also a male witch, aka a warlock. And I'm going to expound upon that sentiment in my epilogue for the video, as well as addressing many of the connections of Mr. Jaboukie Young White to other notable figures in the entertainment industry through his family. Whenever you see a so-called up-and-coming star who also has siblings that have personal connections or relationships with other people throughout the record industry, the movie world, etc., you know that he's someone who they have plans for.
GQ magazine is redefining the definition of masculinity in this.
Now, brothers, imagine the presumptuousness of an anchor on television proclaiming into the camera that a magazine or publication dared to quote-unquote redefine femininity or feminism or womanhood in any way. There would be an upheaval. There would be a thunderstorm, a shower of vitriol coming from women all across America, all across the quote-unquote Western world. But that is how disrespectful the average female is in the quote-unquote Western world, and it's because men tolerate it. Men tolerate these idiots. Gayle King, at 65 years old, is still a big idiot. If she was anywhere near as wise as she's supposed to be at her age, she would tell the executives at CBS that we should not greenlight a segment like this because it is too overtly disrespectful towards men. If Will Welch was half a man, which he is not, once again, he's a witch, and I'm going to go over that in the epilogue for this video. But if he were half a man, he would at least show some level of respect for his own masculinity, his own manhood, by saying, you know what, there are things that we can do better as men, but we're not supposed to offend or assault the principles of manhood, because it is manhood and masculinity that has created and built and maintained civilization. That is the bottom line. Women cannot create civilization. They can bring forth life from between their legs, but they cannot create civilization or administrate over large groups of people because they don't have that level of mental capacity, that level of cognitive function. And many people are going to get upset by that. I have to address the truth if they're going to be so disrespectful in how they speak about manhood.
Magazine is redefining the definition of masculinity in this Me Too era. For November's new masculinity issue, interviews with Pharrell Williams, NBA star Kevin Love, and comedian and Daily Show correspondent, that is Jaboukie Young White.
Now, brothers, these three males are supposed to represent the new paragons of manhood / masculinity for the 2020s. This is who they want men to become. Someone who dresses up like a female priestess, like Pharrell Williams. Someone who admits to being psychologically unstable and mentally weak, like Kevin Love, no disrespect. Or an out-of-the-closet homosexual / pansexual in Jaboukie Young White. This is how you know that they're trying to destroy society, by destroying the idea of who is supposed to be the head, that being the man.
Respondent, that is Jaboukie Young White. They look at how men's behavior, it's changing. Young White shares.
Now she states, look at how men's behavior is changing. We need to start addressing these women and how their behavior needs to change. Not because that will make it change, but just so that they can have a reflection put in front of them and understand how offensive it is for them to dare claim that men's behavior needs to change when it is men who have gotten society to the level that is at right now. The woman is trying to forcibly grab the baton from men, but they're not doing it because that's what they're conjuring up in their own minds. Behind the curtains, there are Luciferian pansexual men who are putting the battery in the backs of these females to believe that this is something that they're capable of doing. The woman is not capable of even conjuring up these notions on her own. She's being coached and prompted by quote-unquote pansexual male elite working from behind the scenes. Of course, that might sound far-fetched to many people, but please understand that the feminist movement was bankrolled by the international bankers. It was not something that was conjured up by women. The concept of the goddess movement was created by a Caucasian man named Robert Graves. I'll probably be covering that more in depth in another video. But these things do not come from women, they come from men. Now, of course, you did have Madame Blavatsky, who was one of the foremost Caucasian authorities on Luciferianism back in the mid to late 1800s. But even she had to study abroad from many of the yogis and the high priests of the vestiges of the Babylonian Kemetic mystery school system that we call today Hinduism or Buddhism, or many of the belief systems of the Aboriginal or indigenous tribes of Asia, Arabia, Eastern Africa, etc. That is where she went to learn her understanding of what it meant to conjure the energies or to summon the energies of the mother goddess, the divine child, etc. But just getting back to the point, the fountain of wisdom for the feminist movement today comes from Luciferian men, not from women.
That is Jaboukie Young White. They look at how men's behavior, it's changing. Young White shares his experience as a member of the LGBTQ community.
They want the homosexual to be the new standard for manhood. So now they have to ask him about the quote-unquote changing behavior of men. They need regular men to be guilt-tripped into accepting homosexuality. That's why they're always lambasting men with this notion or with this concept of homophobia, which means a fear of homosexuality. Now it's transphobia, which is a fear of quote-unquote transgenders or transsexuals. Why is that? Because they know that is a way to attack men's pride by claiming that they're fearful or that they're scared of something. It's another vain attempt, unfortunately, to shame men. What they're not grasping is that there is going to be a very drastic snapback, and it's already starting all over the internet and social media. Men are finally starting to understand what's going on, and there's going to be a counterstrike soon. And of course, when that happens, many of these other demographics that are trying to play on what they perceive to be the weaknesses of men are going to have their own weaknesses exposed.
Community. He uses humor to tackle tough topics like gun control and skits on The Daily Show. First on CBS This Morning, Jaboukie Young White and GQ editor-in-chief, that's Will Welch, join us at the...
Now, nothing against Jaboukie Young White, but as we're going to see in the epilogue, as we go through certain pictures of him, he's clearly someone who's struggling not only with his sense of masculinity and his sexual identity, but with sanity, which is the case with many of these notable young quote-unquote stars or celebrities in training in Hollywood. Now, I was unable to locate any photos that would denote to me that he necessarily has intimate knowledge of the craft, but he certainly will soon enough, especially if his career continues on the arc that they seem to have planned for him.
Table. Welcome to you both, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
I want to start with you, Will, because I love when you got the job. Most people said, congrats, yay, bravo. And you had one friend that said, yikes, hell of a time to be editor-in-chief of a men's magazine. And you took...
Now, brothers, isn't that amazing? Gayle King states that Will Welch, editor-in-chief of GQ, which is a men's magazine, was told by a quote-unquote friend, which Gayle King is going to reveal to be a female friend, quote-unquote friend, that it's a hell of a time to be the editor-in-chief of a men's magazine. Once again, the presumptuousness of these modern-day liberal females is amazing to me. As if a man is supposed to feel guilty that he's supposed to be the head of something that has been the bastion of male expression for a very long time now. If you've grown up in a household, say, for example, your father may have had a subscription to GQ because it instructed men on what was fashionable. Why are women concerned about what men are reading?
You took that to mean what?
Yeah.
What he took that to mean is that he better follow his orders. He better follow his instructions. His job is to be a worker bee at GQ and to utilize his time as editor-in-chief of that magazine as making sure that he can promote as much effeminization as possible, as much gender bending as possible, and make sure that it just basically becomes an outlet to shame men. Once again, this character, Will Welch, is a witch.
Yeah, I took it as a sort of a reality check,
Yeah.
and she was throwing the gauntlet, saying this is exciting, it's a big role, congratulations, but this is super.
But make sure that you do your job. When did it occur that men were taking all of this career advice from random women? When you got your first job, maybe as a teenager, or your first real job in your early to mid-20s, your mother will give you certain advice. Son, make sure that your facial hair is trimmed neatly. Make sure that you have a haircut. Make sure that on your first day your clothes are pressed, that they're ironed, that your tie is properly tied, that your shoes are shined, things of that nature. Now females are telling males, not men like Will Welch, that he better do his job to equalize the genders, because within the witchcraft circles, the woman is actually not even just on an equal playing field or on an equal station or an equal plane as the man. She's actually considered superior to the man because the mother goddess or that archetype is venerated, especially by simpletons like this guy right here.
Serious work.
Because you said, what is men's role in what you call the shut up and listen era?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you hear that, brothers? This is the quote unquote shut up and listen era. So men are just supposed to be quiet and listen to women speak, as if that's something that men owe to random women. Now, don't get it twisted. When you speak to your wife or to your daughter or to your sister or to your mother, and they are apparently within a time period of consternation for them or worry or doubt, and they're becoming emotionally unstable, yes, we do have to be there for them and listen to them. But we don't owe random women a motherfucking thing. Not even a little bit. Because you better believe they do not believe that they owe random men anything. They look at men as their competition, but they need to program men into believing that men should be teaming up with them to make them, quote unquote, equal to men. If you truly were as strong and as independent as you claim, you would never ask a man for help to give you what you should be able to earn on your own merits, but they know they can't do it. They can't do it unless they get a handout. Because the woman's strength is in the home, not in the workplace trying to compete with men. They do it just so that they have a way to manifest their lust for chaos.
That was your take.
Yeah, and the new masculinity issue, which came out yesterday,
very provocative cover.
It is a provocative cover.
Yeah.
No, not provocative, inflammatory, and disrespectful. And there's no such thing as new masculinity.
How to get people's attention in this environment.
I love it. Yeah, it is really stunning.
We started working on this issue in January. And that's partially because it is sort of this shut up and listen moment where women especially don't want men just like barging in like, we're going to fix this. Mm-hmm.
Supposedly women don't want that. But those same women will tell you that they want a man who can take control and take charge. Ain't that a bitch? So the moral of the story is what? Women don't really know what they want. So it's really up to the man to know what he wants and to lead his woman. Because if left up to her own devices, the world will turn into a cesspool if you pay too much attention to what women want. They deserve respect and love when they show you as a man that they're willing to give that. But the random woman has declared herself as a sovereign entity, so she's left on her own. Figure things out on your own, lace up your boots, handle your business. Simple as that.
And we take that aspect seriously. So we wanted to take our time with it, do it right, and really get all the dials set in the right place. So we're proud of the result.
But guess what? Re-examining masculinity is not only good for women, it's good for men. It's for freeing
Absolutely.
Exercise. And you got in your interview.
Well, it's good for a man to always examine himself. I'm not sure about men re-examining masculinity. I don't even know what that really means. If we're talking about respect for the woman, a man should always respect people, period, until and unless they show that they're not deserving of respect. And I'm just talking about from a general perspective or a general level.
Jaboukie, a comment that I thought really hit home, which is that for many men, the way they learn masculinity is through getting it beaten into them. It's kind of...
No, that's nonsense. Men learn how to be men in real households that are being led by men, from instruction, from observation, and if you're not willing to listen or obey, through discipline. And that can come in various ways. If your father had to lay hands on you, it's normally because you were out of place and out of pocket. Now, if someone chose to abuse their powers as a father, then that's something that's going to reflect on his entire family and on his entire life, because most people who don't have discipline in one area don't have discipline in other areas. This person here, Jaboukie Young White, is a broken character, as are his brothers. And I'll be showing that later on in this video. He has two brothers named Javon and Javay, and all three of them are pansexual. So it's very clear that they were raised up in the programming to some degree so that they could enter into the entertainment industry.
Bar on their identity. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that so many of us, the traits that we pick up in our childhood are things that we maybe didn't naturally gravitate toward, but we were taught, no, this is the way that it's supposed to be. And you sort of correct yourself over time and build on what that natural impulse was to just like express yourself.
You talk about what you heard in your...
Well, first, let me say this. Men have always taught their sons certain ways so that you could maintain what was built before you. That's what's called a culture. Right now in America, we're living in a cultureless society. People are trying to reinvent the wheel because they're being taught to worship themselves, worship their own opinion. People like this character get on television and act as if he's enlightened. And I promise you that behind the scenes, he's a fraction individual, most likely on antidepressants, no disrespect. But a lot of these people are strung out on medication and also, of course, non-prescription drugs as well. You don't find out about that until they're about 45 years old and they're found slumped over in an alley, like Robert Downey Jr. or Prince found in his home strung out on medicated drugs. Of course, people are going to say, well, Prince was murdered or whatever. But the point is that he was still strung out on medication as well. A lot of these people, they get on TV and they talk a gang of shit and they don't know up from down.
Dad's barbershop, for example.
Yeah. Which is a bastion of masculinity. Yeah. The black barbershop.
Once again, another attack, this time directly on black manhood, between the liberal black female, Gayle King, with her bum-ass wig on, and the happy-go-lucky homosexual, Jaboukie Young White. They're so offended by men who still want to be men. It bothers them so much. That's why they're coining these phrases, new masculinity. Well, what is the new femininity? And when they say new masculinity, they're also trying to conjure the energy of the divine child, aka the divine hermaphrodite, who brings together both the divine feminine and the divine masculine into one. Pharrell Williams, and I'll be expounding on him a bit as we already know, he is a pupil of Vulcan. That's why he throws up that V hand sign, what he calls the Star Trek hand sign. He's someone who is deeply embedded in the programming. Both he and his partner, Chad Hugo, or as they call themselves, the Neptunes. The quote-unquote god Neptune, as we all know, he was the quote-unquote god of the seas, meaning he was the god over the nations, and he held the trident. The trident, or the Trishula, represents once again the quote-unquote divine trinity. The trident is also held by Shiva. So that's how we know that this primordial aspect of a quote-unquote god figure that the nations adhere to was something that was global in nature. It wasn't just regional. So it was just an interpretation by all the different quote-unquote nations or races of the world of some type of quote-unquote king who ruled in the ancient time, whether it be Adam or Ham or Cush or Nimrod. That is who the ancient gods represent. But just getting back to the point, the character of Neptune, or as he was also known as Poseidon, or as the people of Kemet called him, Sobek. This was an entity who was considered the quote-unquote god of the seas. You brothers who read the scriptures know that when the Bible tells us about the seas or the waters, it's talking about races of people.
Yeah, it's been there many times.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. I remember when the Dangerously in Love video dropped, and I was like doing choreo in the back, and they were like, "You can't do that." Like, why can't I do this? Like the choreo is popping. Like, why would I not do this?
You can't do that because it's confusion, dude. That's why. Nobody wants some grown man in their barbershop trying to do Beyonce choreography. Get the hell out of here.
So, yeah, I think that it was stuff like that where I feel like for me, coming to terms with not being straight, I was just like, okay, well, I'm already existing outside of this, so a lot.
Absolutely, you're not straight. The opposite of straight is what? It's crooked.
A lot of this doesn't apply to me. I can just pick and choose. But there are a lot of people who still feel the pressure to adhere to every single thing that they're told they need to be. And
Will, you did this.
Yes, that's called a culture. You dwell outside of any culture. That's what it means to be a part of the quote-unquote LGBTQ community, which is not a real community because they don't really congregate together as one. They come together for quote-unquote parades, which is really just a mechanism to publicize their life choice.
Survey, 1,000 men and women about the state of masculinity. What did you find?
Well, the first thing is that 97% of respondents said that they've noticed that masculinity is changing. So this is real.
Well, quote unquote, masculinity is being engineered. It's not really changing. It's not anything that's organic. They're pushing certain things on men through the corporate world. That's why I call this series The Corporate Attack on Manhood. They're putting pressure on men to change through the corporate workspace. Because the leaders of all these corporations, or the people who sit on the boards of advisors for these corporations, are all illuminists. That's why you'll notice in your corporation, and it seems to happen all at once, they'll start to say, we're going to install gender neutral bathrooms, or we're going to change our protocol on how we treat people who are transgendered, things of that nature. They all embrace the same ideas at the same time. Why is that? Because on their board of advisors are people who are illuminists or witches or members of certain covens that we call fraternities or sororities, whose job it is to implement certain Luciferian principles at the same time. They advise these things at the same time.
This is happening. It's not something we made up out of thin air.
Yeah.
The other thing that stuck out to me is 30% of men said that they were confused by the changes. Yeah. And that was
the reason why, well, at least according to him, 30% of men say that they were confused by the changes is because men by nature seek out things that make sense. That's why when you look at the history of the world, the great philosophers and the great teachers, they were men, because men seek to understand the environment that is around them. Women just seek to gratify themselves and their emotions. I'm not saying that there are no truth-seeking women. Of course there are. But in general, the woman seeks out immediate gratification of however she's feeling at the time or whatever she's feeling at the time in the moment. Men, when they have a manly perspective, know how to compartmentalize. They know how to say to themselves, okay, this is how I'm feeling right now, but I have to put that shit to the side for the greater good.
Real call to action for me and for the team at GQ. It's like,
you feel confused by the changes?
I don't feel confused. For me, the new masculinity, it's very simple. It's
bow down, worship your wife, listen to what she has to say, because she is the master, you're the apprentice in witchcraft. That's all it is. That's why they say that bullshit about happy wife, happy life. If you're waiting on your wife to be happy, you're never going to have a happy life, because the woman is never happy. But this guy is a simp through and through.
I know who I am, and I respect who you are. It comes down to that.
Yeah.
I'm aware, I'm free to express myself.
You're white woke. That's what this guy is. He's white boy woke.
I also respect Jaboukie's right to express himself. I wouldn't ever put my needs, I wouldn't project those on him, and I ask the same thing in return.
So then you guys should have no problem, because you both have the same needs. To be freaked out pansexuals, worshiping the mother goddess and the horn god. I don't think Jaboukie knows about that quite yet, but you never know, he might, because a lot of these homosexuals, they're into mother nature, quote unquote mother nature or mother goddess worship themselves. But this dude, Will Welch, deeply embedded.
So I want to know when you say changing how?
Yeah.
That vulnerability is okay
Yeah.
is one of the things that you point out in a magazine.
Absolutely.
Men are
This is another fallacy that they're trying to push on men. This concept of emotional vulnerability. Women love it when you're vulnerable. That's a complete and utter fucking lie. The only time in your life where it's okay for you to cry in front of your woman is if one of your parents pass away. That's it. Every other time, you better have your shit locked down. And as a man, you need to have your shit locked down in general, because life keeps fucking moving forward. All right? It don't stop for any fucking body. So you better have your shit locked down. This nonsense about emotional vulnerability. We're all human beings. We have emotions. There are going to come times in your life where you might need to be by yourself. You might get emotional to yourself or for yourself to just let things out. But to be like that in front of other people and to let them see your flaws and your cracks, that's not something that I would advise, especially in front of a woman, because the woman is constantly looking for any type of weakness or flaw in your character that she can use against you later on. Okay? So do not fall for that nonsense about emotional vulnerability. That's nothing but hogwash and balderdash.
Not raised that way.
Yeah, and this project is ongoing for us. So it's something that we've been touching on all year. Then we did a whole issue around it that's out now, and we're going to continue to do it. So last issue, Brad Pitt in his cover story was talking about growing up in the Ozarks, not feeling free.
Brad Pitt, another pansexual, high-level Luciferian, aka Mason.
To be in touch with his feelings, and the process of becoming an adult for him has been about learning to be vulnerable.
Should male anchors have to wear suits on TV?
And Brad Pitt, now that I think of it, he was linked up with that alleged transgender Angelina Jolie. And you see what they've done with their children. They're another couple who decided they were going to raise one of their children as the opposite gender. So those are the games that they play in Hollywood. Once again, they want to bring together the opposites. They believe that there's no such thing as boy or girl. They're both one and the same, and they can be raised as such. That's part of the sexual fluidity dynamic of the veneration of the Baphomet. It's known as Rebis, R-E-B-I-S. I'll be expounding on that in other videos.
TV asking for a friend. Go.
I felt that I should wear one today out of respect for Gail. Otherwise, I think it's a free-for-all. You know, you can try the yellow coat.
That's a handshake. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Okay, so now, brothers, this is going to be the epilogue for the video that I did on attacking masculinity or attacking manhood, starring Will Welch and Jaboukie Young White, as well as Pharrell Williams. And I'll be delving a bit deeper into the aspects of Pharrell Williams in the video that I'm going to do on him and the Neptunes, but I'm going to touch on him as well in this epilogue. I just want to start, of course, with the cover of this GQ magazine here. Of course, it's not the cover that was in reference in the segment, that being with Pharrell Williams dressed in a yellow dress. But as we can see here, I just want to point out to brothers that the overall theme of GQ magazine is going to change. When I was a child, it was known as a men's magazine, but since they're attacking masculinity and manhood, anything that has been created where the meaning was to be distributed towards men and to reinforce manhood has to be altered, because the magazines, the print media, the television, the music, the intention is to get men to accept their feminine side, quote unquote. Because in Luciferianism, they do not believe in the concept of man and woman. They believe that we're all simply spirits or quote-unquote souls that don't have a gender. And we did not get to decide what our quote-unquote gender is. So therefore, we can be non-binary or quote-unquote gender fluid. Just pay very close attention to the cover of this magazine. And there's a reason, no disrespect to Odell, there's a reason why they have Odell Beckham here on this cover, because they know, number one, that he's an MK asset. They know that he's under the programming, and they know that he as well is quote unquote sexually fluid. Just my perspective, just my take on it. Everything that I say in this video, once again, brothers, as you always know, is alleged. But let's look at some of the subtext here on the cover of this magazine. It says, "Inside the mind of Odell Beckham Jr." Just that title is meant to convey an understanding that Odell Beckham has been fractured psychologically, mentally, that he's under some type of psychological or mental programming. For those of us who have understanding and are quote unquote in the know, we see that Odell is dressed in all black for Saturn. It also denotes that he's a practicing witch. Do not be surprised when you come to find out that Odell Beckham dabbles in witchcraft. Many of the top athletes in the entertainment field do so. We've already seen that Tom Brady finally admitted that he does. We also see that Odell Beckham has the blonde hair for Hippocrates. You'll also notice that the basketball player for the LA Lakers, Mr. Kyle Kuzma, has decided that he's going to quote unquote shake things up with a blonde hairstyle. Why is that? Because he's being initiated into the craft. And he himself might also be a monarch athlete. Notice that he's from Michigan. Michigan seems to be a hotbed for the sports monarch program. But let's just get back to the point here. As we can see on this cover, it says inside the mind of Odell Beckham. He's dressed in all black with the blonde hairdo. Let's read what it says here just to the left of Odell. The real story of Supreme, the season's flyest sneakers. Once again, GQ is supposed to be a men's magazine. Whenever I read GQ back in the day, if my father picked it up, it would talk about dress shoes and dress slacks and blazers and overcoats and stuff like that. Now they're talking about the flyest sneakers. I'll give them a little bit of a pass on that because I guess that they're trying to stay hip. And with Will Welch as their new editor-in-chief, maybe he wants to be more hip and more up-to-date. When we read down, it says a holistic guide to fitness. And right underneath that, it says the end of straight, a transition memoir. Brother, this is Gentleman's Quarterly. This is supposed to be a men's magazine. Why do they have a subtopic or a subtext here that says the end of straight, a transition memoir? So manhood or masculinity is being attacked from all angles. I just wanted to highlight this magazine cover right here because to me, it conveyed and communicated a lot. So now, brothers, this is Mr. Will Welch. As we can see here, this is a photo shoot, a photo op. And every way in which photos, especially photos that are meant to publicize or appear in magazines like a GQ, or say for a cover feature per se, the photo constitution or how they decide to situate the subject of the photo is very meticulously planned out. It's done a certain way for a reason because for the most part, even the photographer often is in the know on the understanding of Luciferianism, the Kabbalah, etc. and the story that they want to tell through the pictures. They understand that pictures do speak 1,000 words. As we can see here, Mr. Will Welch is dressed pretty much in all black other than for his t-shirt, and the left side of his face is blacked out to only show the right eye, which is meant to convey what? That he is a venerator of Heru, the quote-unquote sun god, aka Christ on the left-hand side, or Lucifer. And we'll be delving into that a little bit later pertaining to Mr. Will Welch. Look at his t-shirt. On his t-shirt, of course, we see the pyramid and the red and the blue encircling the pyramid. I've gone over the concepts of Saturnianism in many videos, especially on the YouTube channel, and one video on the Patreon channel featuring Mr. Morgan Freeman and Mr. Peter Dinklage. Saturnianism, or the veneration of Saturn, is basically the coming together of the blue and the red, the ice cold and the fiery hot, the bringing together of opposites, the blue representing Saturn and the red representing the sun, or the solar logos. Saturn is the father, the sun is the son, or S-O-N, the coming together of Asar and Heru. That leads to enlightenment. Brothers, this is another photo. As we can see here, he has on the black blazer, and he's making sure that the flower that his face is being obscured by only hides the left eye. You see that? Only the right eye is visible. Once again, the right eye is the eye of Heru, or the eye of Ra, the quote-unquote sun god. They're sun worshippers, i.e. serpent worshippers, because that's the same concept, venerating the sun or the serpent, because the serpent is the great enlightener, per se. Now, brothers, pay very close attention to this photo right here. Some people may say that he's actually exposing the left eye in this photo, and sometimes they'll do that. They may take pictures exposing the right eye, sometimes the left eye, to show you that they worship both the sun god and the moon goddess. But in this photo, when I look at it, what he's trying to convey is the same concept that we saw in the last photo. He's obscuring the right eye behind the red bottle, because once again, Heru is represented by the solar logos, or the red. You see that? Now right here, brothers, we have normal Luciferian slash quote-unquote Masonic themes. The black and the white, the coming together of opposites, the quote-unquote checkerboard floor. And just to take it a step further, another symbol of the bringing together of opposites, the intersection that leads to transformation or elevation, is the X symbol. Notice what he's doing with his legs here. This is on purpose. This is not by happenstance. The black and the white, and also his legs crossed, is to denote that he's been illuminated. He has met the quote-unquote great God at the crossroads, and he knows who his real quote-unquote God is. Now, brothers, in this photo right here, he's trying to act as if he's shocked or surprised by something. But once again, he's really just trying to signify the craft, his belief system, Luciferianism, Wicca, whatever you want to call it. We're going to delve a little bit deeper into why I say it's very clear that he's a Wiccan, but it's basically all the same thing. I did a video a couple of years ago, probably about 1.5 years or 2 years ago. It was the first video that I did on Gisele Bündchen, the quote-unquote wife of Tom Brady. And during that video, there were a series of photos that were shown where people would have their index finger pointing upward or in the air. That's known in occultic circles as the finger of Jupiter. So the reason why he has both of his index fingers in the air is to show that he venerates Jupiter, also known as Zeus, or Amun, the quote-unquote hidden god. Also notice, once again, he's dressed in all black. We're going to delve into why he's dressed in all black in a few. He's going to acknowledge it, basically. But all these editors, brothers, these editors-in-chiefs, and especially notable figures in this society, they're Luciferians. Their job is to convince the masses of people that Luciferianism is enlightenment. This is going all the way back to the 15 and 1600s, where they were known as humanists. Then in the 1700s, they were known as Enlightenment thinkers. In the 1800s, they were known as Marxists. So on and so forth, all the way down to today. But when you look at this photo, once again, he has his fingers pointing up. That's for Jupiter. Jupiter is also known as the boy god. Quote unquote Jupiter the boy. That's talking about Horus or Heru. This is another symbolic photo. Many times you'll see members of the craft pose with their hand over their mouth, their fist over their mouth, their finger over their mouth. It's meant to show that they venerate Harpo or Harpocrates, and also that he is the god of secrets, and they're going to keep all of the secrets of the craft. This is the same photo where he has the t-shirt on with the pyramid, with the blue and red coming together. Brothers, this is pretty clear right here. He's throwing up the so-called Vulcan hand sign, or the Vow symbol, the downward pyramid, to show you that, once again, he is in the craft. He's a Luciferian. And what is he showing? He's showing his right eye. You see that, brothers? And the downward pyramid also represents the vulva of the woman. The downward pyramid is always, or many times, is a symbol for the mother goddess. So when he throws up that V over his right eye, it represents what? Heru coming through the vulva, or being born. But as we can see here, he's a Kabbalist. He's heavily interested in the Babylonian Kemetic mystery school system. And he has to be, because that's how he got into such a prominent position. These people are not just getting hired. It's not just, I like his editing skills, we're going to hire him. No. These are handshake deals that occur because they're trying to break down manhood. They're trying to force the woman and the divine hermaphrodite, quote unquote, into prominent positions. And that manifests itself in the promotion of transvestites, the promotion of transgenderism, the promotion of hermaphrodites, the promotion of homosexuality, lesbianism, feminism, so on and so forth. But once again, as we can see here, he's throwing up that same Vulcan hand sign that we see Pharrell throw up. What they call the quote-unquote Star Trek hand sign. I did a video on this, I believe, pertaining to Outkast. Once again, notice the name of that group, Outkast. It's talking about the concept of quote-unquote Lucifer or Satan being cast out. at least according to the religious exegesis of the scriptures, that he was cast out of heaven. That's why they call themselves that. Andre 3000. It's an allusion to the 1,000-year rulership of Heru. Big Boy, another allusion to Heru. He is the boy God. But anyway, let's continue on.